Hey, and thanks for taking the time to watch this week's Oldtown short, Light and Grace. When we look around our Oldtown sanctuary, everywhere we look, we see fingerprints of the past that surround us with sacred stories as we continue to move forward into the future, building strong faith foundations for present and future generations. The antique glass in the windows let the light in and sometimes blur the landscape outside, helping us to imagine what God might be calling us to do out in the world. The shutters that open to the inside can let light in or close to shut out the storm or to help hold the heat in, reminding us that we are in charge of what we allow into our hearts and our minds. The prisms in the windows and on the center chandelier with the grapes and the leaves that were hand-stamped by an area jeweler bring unexpected rainbows throughout the sanctuary, reminding us to always stay open to the joys in our lives. The cheap seats, as they called them, up in the balconies, where the slaves and servants or any family that didn't own a pew once sat, now sit empty by the grace of God, as all are welcome to gather on the main floor. The little pew doors that held in the heat of foot warmers and kept out the critters now give us our own safe spaces to sit during worship, to pray and sing and ponder. And all of the lights, which at one time burned oil, and the organ that once was pumped by hand, have all now been electrified as new technology and advances have made our gatherings easier and more comfortable. Folks, a lot has changed over the last 309 years, but there are two things that have stayed the same, and they are light and grace. Now, it's not light that comes from the chandelier or the light fixtures, and it doesn't stream through the windows from outside, but it's the light that would be in our sanctuary even if the electricity was out and there was a raging storm outside. Because it's by the grace of God that the light of Christ fills our sanctuary and our hearts and calls us to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves, no matter what is happening in the world around us. Well, friends, I would love to stand here on this Founders Day and proclaim that the light was brought here by our early settlers back in 1712 and has burned brightly for the last 309 years, serving as a beacon for the lost and weary travelers. But unfortunately, that's not true. Our church has faced an abundance of blessings and an overwhelming number of challenges over the years. There have been moments of utter grace and beauty, and there have been ugly moments of fighting, arguments, and unrest. Because the truth is, though this church was built on the foundation of Jesus Christ, it was also built by human hearts and hands. And as we know, as human beings, we all make mistakes sometimes. We make bad choices, and when our feelings get hurt, we say things that we shouldn't say. That's why we can't just lean on the light that shines here in Oldtown, assuming that it will always burn bright. We also need to do our part to reflect the light out into the world, shining into the darkness, lending a hand where we can, and sharing the love of God with the world. But we also need to remember that the light doesn't come from us. It comes from our faith in God and the unique gifts of grace that God has given us. Folks, there have been generations in the past, and there will be generations to come. Over the last 309 years, there were times of downright darkness here in Oldtown. But no matter how dark it got, the light always found a way to shine through. It may not have always shone brightly, but the light never went completely out. We know that the light shined brightly in 1742 during the ministry of Abijah Weld, when during 1 year the church membership grew by 150 members. And because of the sudden influx, a new congregation, the Second Congregational Church in Attleboro, was started, thus sharing the light with more and more people. There was another rebirth in 1828. 2 years prior, in 1826, our church's second sanctuary, which was right down the street, was deemed inhabitable due to unknown damage and destruction, which we believe may have been damage due to an earthquake that came through the area at that time. The congregation was forced to worship on the second floor of a nearby factory building, and to top it off, in 1827, their pastor, the Reverend Thomas Williams, quit because of lack of payment. The church had no home and no leader, and yet the people of Oldtown pulled up their bootstraps and worked together to raise money. And in 1828, Ezra Walker, a local builder, was hired to break ground for a new sanctuary. As it says in the church records, it's to be a sanctuary to serve future generations. Friends, because of the hard work and dedication of the church members of 1827, we now meet in the third meeting house of the Oldtown Church, which has been a beacon of light for the past 193 years. In the early 1900s, under the ministry of Reverend John Whitehill, the Mutual Helpers came together to raise money for the church to dig out a vestry downstairs and bring heat and electric lights to our sanctuary. And through it all, they continued to spread the light of Christ through service to others. Again, the light shined brightly. In 1989, when the beloved Reverend Marty Singley took a call to Greendale People's Church in Worcester, Massachusetts, and left Oldtown, the congregation pulled up their bootstraps once again and raised money to build Maxey Hall and additional classrooms downstairs to invite in new families and to carry on the ministry in Oldtown. And in 2004, under the ministry of Pastor Katrina Clinton, the congregation swung open its doors, opening for same-gender marriage, making true the statement that whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Friends, now in 2021, and after our doors were closed to in-person worship for 17 months due to a pandemic, it's up to us to figure out how we will move forward in new and different ways to continue to share the light and love of Christ with new future generations. Yes, there are fingerprints of the past all around us, but we are constantly making our own new fingerprints as well as we continue to share the love and light of Christ, which is only made possible by God's amazing grace. Friends, as we head out into the next 309 years of ministry here in Oldtown, it's up to us to keep the light shining. And the truth is, it will, if we focus on what's important to our faith, if we're good examples in our everyday lives, and if we remember that our job is not to pressure people into coming to church, but it's to love God so much that you live out your faith in all that you do, even when you're not thinking about it. It's carrying the light of Christ, that special sparkle in your eye, that extra bounce in your step, and the excitement and energy for the gospel that shines out for others to see. Friends, as we work to keep the light shining brightly here in Oldtown, and as we carry it out into the world to share with others, it's my hope and my prayer for each one of you that you might remember the words of Jesus. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to God in heaven.